Welcome to the show. I'm David Zhang. Tonight I've got an analysis into the Chinese military as well as US sanction against it, so stay tuned. But before that, I wanted to take a look at Bobby Piton's finding of the Pennsylvania election results, as well as explain why Louie Gohmert sued Mike Pence. As well, Mitch McConnell blocked a request to pass the $2,000 check. He says the relief money and Section 230 in the NDAA bill and also voter fraud are linked together and will be looked into this week altogether. So let's hope he will actually do it and not just say it. My quick 2 cents on this is that Trump got the better deals in the negotiation. Now, speaking of Art of the Deal, I'm telling you, you got to read that book. He really break it down in terms of business dealing. But in this episode, I will break down how exactly he came on top. Let's get into our first topic. Data analyst and mathematician Bobby Piton released some shocking information regarding the election on Twitter. Now, in a series of tweets, he outlined exactly how Pennsylvania achieved a huge discrepancy between the number of reported voter registration versus the real numbers. Let me break this down for you. Out of 9 million records, which I assume are people's last names, by the way, the population of Pennsylvania is about 12.8 million people. There were around 520,000 unique last names. This means about every 17 people would share the same last name out of those 9 million records. What I did was divide the 9 million by the 520,000. But here's the interesting part. From those 520,000 unique last names, about 47% or 245,000 belongs to the same person. According to Bobby, this single last name has no other family attached, no brothers, sisters, relatives, which means this single last name stands for almost 50% of all of the unique last names in the state of Pennsylvania. But what exactly does this mean? Well, Bobby took the top 1,000 most popular last names and then examined it against his own data. He found that 695,000 people were missing in that top 1,000 list. His tweets, literally there are about 14,000 fewer Smith than there should be, and about 19,000 Williams have gone missing, and then 30,000 Johnsons are nowhere to be found, as well 11,000 Jacksons went MIA. So what exactly in the world is going on in the Pennsylvania state? Because exactly 500 out of the top 1,000 names in Pennsylvania actually have deficits in the number of people that should have been there. Basically, the number that he calculated don't match up with the official numbers of the ranking in the top 1,000 last names. This list of ranking of the 1,000 last names is based on populations. Hence, the popularity on the ranking is based on the total number tallied of the same last name. So under normal circumstances, it would only make sense that based on each one person, one vote, it should exactly match up. Even if we had duplicate last names, which is very common, it still wouldn't make sense that the common last names show a deficit in the data. This means that the top 1,000 list should be correct, right? Because it was based on population. Then that would only mean that the data collected by Bobby Piton was the one that was inflated. It means that out of nowhere came an extra 950,000 votes, according to him. So the missing 695,000 to around 950,000 votes associated with people was just missing from the list. Based on this screenshot, you see that almost all of the last name contain a massive shortage. This is just in Pennsylvania alone. You can take out the hyphenated last name, the married last names, or whatever error there is, it still would not make up the massive discrepancy of the upward of 950,000 people just gone missing. But the problem is the court won't even look at these evidence because they're just going to reject the cases left and right. First reason they might do it is just no standing. It's an easy deflection to reject the filing. Or they might say no time or delay on the docket to actually review the case, which they may just reject anyways. Or in the case of the Supreme Court, not actually upholding the Constitution. Judges are just making excuses left and right. So just to summarize what Bobby Piton's finding is that there is a massive discrepancy between the number of the unique last names in Pennsylvania versus the actual number of voters under the last name, leading to a massive 950,000 potential votes being fraudulent. Rep. Louie Gohmert filed a lawsuit against Vice President Mike Pence in a bid to overturn the presidential election results. This lawsuit also really put Pence on the spot. Is he willing to go the distance with Trump as he said he had promised? He's asking for the court to give Pence the exclusive authority to decide which electoral college votes should be counted. Now, this lawsuit isn't actually aimed at suing Pence as a person, but it's to help him achieve the desired results on January 6th. Gohmert's lawsuit seeks to deny the Electoral Count Act from 1887, which said the vice president must certify the Electoral College votes. But the lawsuit seeks to overturn that and allow Pence to reject the votes cast for Biden due to a fraudulent election. This effort is claiming that any action taken by Pence on January 6th to certify the Electoral College results to secure a win for Joe Biden will be fraudulent. The judge is Jeremy Conato, who was appointed by Trump to determine that Pence has the authority to pick GOP electors who cast votes for Trump during the joint session of Congress. Let me talk about the Pence card because it is very hard to work in Trump's favor. Here's the thing. The vice president does have the authority to determine which slate of electoral votes count, or neither count for that state. This and also the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution contains the exclusive dispute resolution mechanisms over election. But will Congress stand with Trump? We have many representatives and senators who are voicing their opinion and support, but we need the two-house majority in overturning the Electoral College votes. This means that at least a majority in the House and a majority of the Senate must vote for Trump. But we know that this is not going to happen. The House majority belongs to the Democrat, and the Republican Senate is full of rhinos. I mean, if Trump can just win a presidency with Pence, and then wouldn't that just make Pence the most powerful man on the planet? And if vice presidents can just overturn the election, then who needs a president? It would make Pence Trump and not Trump Pence. Now, in order to reach a contingent election, we have to get the Electoral College votes for Biden below 270, which means at least 3 states must overturn their results. Now, if this judge rules, then there is also a chance that Biden's team will appeal to the Supreme Court, which by the looks of it, there is a huge chance that the Supreme Court might rule for Biden. And that is based on their prior ruling against the Texas case, especially knowing that Chief Justice John Roberts is a compromised individual. But the smart thing Louie Gohmert did with this lawsuit is the following. It says, Vice President Pence, in his capacity as the President of Senate and presiding officer of the January 6, 2021 joint session of Congress under the 12th Amendment, is subject solely to the requirements of the 12th Amendment and may exercise the exclusive authority and sole discretion in determining which electoral college votes are counted for the given state, and must ignore and may not rely on any provisions of the Electoral Count Act that would limit his exclusive authority and his sole discretion to determine the count, which could include votes from the slates of Republican electors from the contested states. This would essentially boost Pence's power in the Congress with the lawsuit. Should the case go through, it will make a huge difference. Thus, Pence card becomes a real possibility. But again, this is only based on the grounds that this case will be ruled and not rejected. So really, showing up on January 6th is about giving the Congress the confidence to vote against the Electoral College certification. Maybe they will see that so many people are supporting Trump, they will have to have the confidence and the majority to oppose the electoral votes for Biden. Now, I don't doubt that Pence will fight for Trump, but I really doubt the process. Therefore, with the support of the people, I think this is why Louie Gohmert decided to bid on the lawsuit. Before I move on to the next segment, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, comment below for what you'd like to see next. The House passed a CCP virus relief bill on Monday night, sending it to the Senate floor today. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, blocked the unanimous consent to vote to pass the $2,000. Now, this may seem like a terrible thing that he just did, but Mitch actually made a patch. So, he says that Trump's plan to take out Section 230 and give $2,000 to American people and also voter fraud is a single issue that the Senate will tackle this week. Well, then what exactly happened that caused Mitch to do this? Well, the first one is that he lost a lot of respect from the Trump supporters and Republicans. As well, Trump actually leveraged a deal against both Senate and House leaders, which is Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. So let me explain. Unanimous consent enables a bill to pass without a recorded vote, but the procedure opens up legislation for an objection by a single senator, which means Mitch wants to vote on it. But he also said he wants to vote on the override of the veto in that defense bill. President Trump used the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 in a bid to actually increase the stimulus payment to $2,000, which would also remove the wasteful spending from the relief bill. Trump had on Sunday signed a relief which was attached to an omnibus spending measure. He says, I will sign the omnibus and COVID package with a strong message that makes clear to Congress that wasteful items needs to be removed. I will send back Congress a red line version, item by item, accompanied by a formal rescission request for Congress insists that those funds be removed from the bill. So then, how did he exactly leverage the bill that the Congress must vote? First, he increased it to $2,000 from $600, which means showing the public that if anyone objects to voting to increase the money, must face the wrath of the American people. But also, it will test which Republican senator or congressman is actually on his side. For example, both Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue expressed that they will support the bill to pass. But the more important part, to look into the NDAA bill, which has the Section 230, and also make Congress investigate voter fraud. This means Trump can find out who his allies are based on the voting results of the two bills voted. Most likely, the bill for the $2,000 will pass, which now has nothing with the foreign aids or the extra money for the lizard walking, all that jazz, right? So it's pure American money. But then whoever votes to override the veto on the defense bill will have to be ready to tell Trump that they're going to be okay with the Section 230 in there. So by the next time the bill gets to Trump's desk, you can tell exactly who is on his side or not. And if Republicans don't vote yes on the $2,000, they're basically giving away the Georgia's runoff election for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Also, Bernie Sanders said he will not vote on the veto for the defense bill unless the virus relief money is voted first. But Mitch wants to vote on all three together because McConnell and many other Republicans are realizing one thing. If they don't work for Trump, the next time they run for re-election, it may be the last run for them. So in the end, who really won? I think Trump did. He got more money for the American people. The $2,000 will pass, and he also got Congress to leverage passing an NDAA bill without the Section 230 or have it change. Then he also got to see who his friends are. Speaking of making a deal, the Trump administration made more efforts to sanction Chinese military-tied companies. The Trump administration has strengthened an executive order to ban U.S. investment in Chinese military companies in a notice published by the Treasury Department late on Monday. Per President Trump's executive order in November 13959, the notice says that Trump's administration would prohibit exchange-traded funds, called ETFs, and index funds from financing Chinese communist military companies and any subsidiaries that are owned or controlled by the Chinese military. Now, this move is to limit the expansion and economic support of the Chinese companies that directly support the Chinese military. The CCP has actually suffered a massive military drawback in 2020. When it comes to harassing Taiwan, since Wuhan closed its city back in January, Chinese bombers have repeatedly flown over Taiwanese China water to show its apparent strength. On February 10th, Taiwanese president shouted to the CCP that these military actions are meaningless and unnecessary. The most important thing for the CCP is to quickly control the pandemic. But of course, the CCP has not stopped. Since then, military aircraft have become the norm. According to the statistics from the Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, from the beginning of this year to October 7th, the CCP dispatched 1,700 million aircrafts and over 1,000 warships to invade Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Now, the CCP does not have the power to actually conquer Taiwan by force, but it has to display a posture of a long-term harassment. In addition to intimidating Taiwan, it directly provoked the first island chain of the US military. It also caused anxiety in neighboring countries, even in European countries. German Defense Minister warned in an interview with the Morning Sydney Herald on November 2nd that Beijing should not use violence to solve the Taiwan Strait issue. It is purely based on a military logic. It will inevitably lead to a failure. She said that the Navy will cooperate with Australia to send warships to patrol the Indo-Pacifics. The CCP does this knowingly that they will not have the power to conquer by force, which is weird given that the Western alliance and the support front that has been made with US, Korea, Taiwan, India, Japan, and Australia, among some other South Asia countries, are working closer than ever to defend the ocean and land sovereignty. This is why that massive stimulus bill contained so many bribery aids to the southeastern countries in Asia. That region is a key to matching China's influence and its expanding pressure towards Australia and some of the southern regions of Asia. The CCP's frequent harassment of Taiwan does not have much military values. It is used more as an internal political propaganda or some external political oaths, which is tantamount to publicizing the obvious intention of the military expansion, arousing high vigilance among countries, and quickly forming an alliance to deal with the CCP. Now, the US military has even demonstrated its oppressive deterrence and has continued to sell weapons to Taiwan to maintain military balance across the Taiwan Strait, which is firmly guarding the first island chain as well. Also, China's conflict with the Indian border is not really playing well in their favor. On May 2nd, the Chinese Communist Army suddenly clashed with the Indian on the border. And on May 5th and 9th, the Chinese and Indian troops renewed their physical clashes near the Banquetuo Lake and also the Nathula Pass in the South Yadong County, which resulted in 11 people being injured from both sides. And then on May 19th, negotiations between the two sides broke down, which led to continuing increasing troops on the border. And on June 15th, China and India has a serious conflict in the Kowloon River Valley. India said that at least 20 Indian soldiers and 43 Chinese soldiers died. Obviously, the CCP has not announced the details of the casualty. Later, the internet exposed the group of tombstones of the CCP's fallen soldiers. The CCP's Ministry of National Defense and the CCP's media have repeatedly claimed to be disengaged, but they have actually increased their troops and displayed images of exercises on the plateau. At the time of domestic and foreign difficulties, top CCP officials tried to imitate the Sino-Indian War launched by Mao Zedong in 1972. But the Indian army is no longer what it used to be and is highly guarded. And the CCP can only use it to divert attention away from the virus. China-India relationship have deteriorated across the border, and India formed an active alliance with the United States, Japan, Australia to deepen military cooperations. If India continues to strengthen its military power and the CCP's provocation caused itself to suffer from the enemy, then India's joint military exercises with the United States, Japan, and Australia in the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea will pose a threat to the CCP's transportation routes. This can only cause the China's surrounding countries to continue to distance themselves from the CCP. And this is actually not what was supposed to happen, because the CCP thought that using intimidation tactics would force India to surrender the land. However, most people who don't live under the lies of the CCP will be able to easily see through the massive glam that the show they just put on. The Chinese Communist Party's occupying Taiwan by force also directly threatens the security of Japan's Ryukyu Islands. Japan has taken the initiative to cooperate with the actions of the United States military and has also actively promoted close alliance with the United States, India, and Australia. Now, Japan as a former expander is well aware of the danger and the waste of military expansion. To counter the CCP's military expansion, Japan's defense budget is constantly increasing, and its self-defense force equipment is changing day by day. It may break through the principle of pure defense one day. One of the CCP's primary education propaganda goals is to create hatred among Japan-Sino relationships through its rough history. You'll find the Nanking Massacre by the Japanese in every history book inside China, because its goal isn't actually to remember history, but rather to use it as a tool to fuel the nationalistic flame of the younger generation. Today, it is common practice for the Chinese to reject Japanese and Korean products, while at the same time still fall to their popular culture. The show of strength from the CCP towards Korea and Japan is once again only to exert pressure, but meaningless pressure. The CCP is aware of its lack of strength, but due to internal fights and propaganda needs, it's still sometimes high profile. However, one of the areas in which the CCP has been able to defeat the US is its soft power tactics. We recently covered this topic, especially when it was reported that Rep. Eric Swalwell was in bed with a Chinese spy. Now, you could see that the Chinese military is actually a spy agency rather than a military. In this day and age, cyber warfare and soft power is everything over hard military combat. And this is why the CCP needs data. Data to the CCP is more important than missiles and battle cruisers because information is everything in today's warfare. In reality, the CCP's army is corrupt, and its constant fraudulent military trainings and weak actual combat capabilities, however, is only for internal political needs. It continues to sing high praises and show for people to see, but this can only lead to more confrontations and may follow the footsteps of the Soviet Union in that arms race during the Cold War. And we know who won that race. Now, the CCP's top leaders are not sober about their military strength and the lack of way to lead the army. Military power is more of an internal struggle of power and corruption. Now, a series of failure of the CCP army in 2020 will not be suspended in 2021. It is likely to further aggravate the risk of military conflicts and the surrounded more problems. This may also herald the ultimate outcome of the CCP. And that is it for today. As always, thanks for watching, and make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest updates. As always, thanks for watching and have a good night.